Hey everyone, welcome to Otaku Talk. It's me, your boy, your host OD, and today we'll be reviewing and analyzing chapter 1120 of One Piece. If this is your first time on my channel or you've been here before but haven't done so already, would greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, and subscribe. Would mean the absolute world to me. Anyway, without much further ado, let's get into this review. Alright, chapter 1120 of One Piece, Atlas. So, I just want to start off by saying something. I've been a little bit grumpy the last couple weeks about the chapters. Not because One Piece is bad, but because it's been dragging. Now, dragging has a negative connotation. A lot of people will conflate me saying it's dragging with me saying that the series is bad. Because it's like, if it's dragging, that means, Oda is like, he's not pacing, blah, 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 blah. In my opinion, those things don't indicate a series being bad. It's just a matter of fact. It's just a statement of fact. The series is dragging. I was talking to another content creator friend of mine about another series I love called The Mech Touch, and that series does almost nothing but drag. And dragging can be bad, but dragging might not even be the correct term in some ways. Sometimes, like with the Mech Touch, I would say it's really dense, but then on top of being dense, there are certain moments between events that feel like dragging because you want to get to the next event and you have to go through this certain event. And the event that you have to go through to get to the explosive event, the payoff event that you really want, it's important, but at the time you're just like, oh my God, this is not what I want right now. And that's what it feels like with One Piece. And before I even read this chapter, I was prepared to do this whole spiel about how One Piece is dragging, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to say that for next chapter drags, because I really thoroughly enjoyed this chapter a lot. And on top of that, I don't want to say we got a lot of new stuff, but the other stuff has been like beats and points and knowledge and information that we have known for a while now, and it has been more, I feel like, catered to both new audiences, people that just started One Piece around Egghead, and two, the members of the world of One Piece. But for avid readers, content creators like myself, diehard fans, nothing super relevant has been brought up, minus one or two things. I even remember bringing up hey, have you noticed that we still technically don't know what the fuck devil fruits are, or how they're made, or where they come from, or anything like that? All we got was desire, and that could mean anything. That could literally mean anything. It can mean that people desired them and made them. It could mean that they spawned. We still don't know the mechanism of action, the mechanism of creation of the devil fruits. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. I was super excited for that, and then we got that, and that's cool, but that's not quite what I'm looking for here. But phenomenal chapter, and instead of me just rambling right now, let me get into it. So first, boom, we got a cover story, and it is Denjiro with a net of the kids that were throwing stones at Yamato. And you see Yamato no, let them go, it's okay. And we find out from the caption of the cover story that Denjiro is in fact the daimyo of the Kibi region. So that's cool. So it looks like all the former scabbards and maybe some other members of Wano have, been promoted or given daimyo-ship and leadership of certain regions. And I honestly can't wait till we get to a point in the series where we get to go back, and after seeing how fucked up Wano is, we get to see it restored with these selective leaders as with these selective leaders as leaders of these regions. I don't know why I was messing up so hard there, but that's that. Anyway, let's get into this episode, or chapter I should say. Now, we start off with a flashback between Dr. Vegapunk and Dr. Clover. And basically in this flashback, Dr. Clover is begging Vegapunk to join his research efforts, to join him, screw the world government, come learn about the ancient history of the world. Vegapunk is basically like, no, I don't want to do that. I work for the government now. This isn't the move. and also like learning history, one-sided history isn't good, isn't beneficial. Actually, he didn't say that. He says that over the Denmushi, so skip that part. But basically, he wants to learn. He's more interested in like pursuing science and figuring out what we can do with science instead of reading about the ancient history. And I find that interesting because I think there's a lot of different types of intelligences and geniuses and interests for smart people. And some people want to tinker, some people want to go into tech, medicine, science, and stuff like that. And so you have Vegapunk, who is clearly infinitely more interested in like STEM than being like a historian, right? And so that just doesn't interest him. And I can tell that there's going to be a lot of people that probably, I don't want to say double down in their hate, but I know Vegapunk's actions have rubbed a lot of us the wrong way. If he had done certain things, if he had, not been so obedient to the world government, if he didn't work for the world government, they wouldn't have half the things that they have. They wouldn't be able to oppress as many people that they've oppressed. And in a way, Vegapunk is responsible for a lot of the sins of the world government. Like, I was talking to my girl the other day, and she was like, I was just pop quizzing her and asking her questions about like the Marines and Vegapunk's and morality, and we hit an interesting subject where she said that anyone that works for the world government is essentially complicit in the actions of the world government. And I was like, so you think the Marines are like bad? And she was like, yes. I was like, so you think Kobe's bad? And she was like, yes. I was like, you think Garp is like bad? I don't know if I said bad or like what word I used, but you get my point. She was like, yes, and I was like, wow. And she did it with no hesitation. And I found that to be really interesting. I even asked her like, if you had to like choose between completely getting rid of the Marines and completely getting rid of pirates, what would you choose? And she said the Marines, and that was honestly wild to me. I mean, I might probably feel the same way, but it was just her ability to like answer quickly for me that really shook me. And so I think that it goes kind of back to that point with Vegapunk where like I think there are going to be people that hate his, you can call it cowardice, his is it Switzerland, the one that's his neutrality of sorts, his like I don't want to deal with it, I just want to study. And I would be one of those people, but at the same time, I completely understand it. It makes absolute sense. Like, what is Vegapunk going to do? What is he going to contribute? And it's thanks to the world government. It's thanks to their resources. It's thanks to their abundance of wealth and stuff that he's able to discover half the things he's able to. And it's probably thanks to all his actions and inactions that he is now in the story going to be able to help us, and he does have the ability to now use everything that he's done over these past 26 years or so to now advance the plot, to now help the world. And so in a way, like, it was necessary for him to work for the world government, necessary for him to not help out the Oharans. Maybe he would have been on Ohara during the Buster Call. So we could talk like that. So I can completely understand being upset with Vegapunk, but I could also understand people that would be like, making excuses for him, because I get it. Like, he's not a combatant. He doesn't want to be out there. He's not some freedom fighter. He's just a guy that wants to do science. And we see that all the time in anime and manga. And to be honest, Vegapunk is really on the tamer side of things, because at least he has a degree of like humanity and morality and ethics to him. And like, he does gripe and have qualms with certain actions that he does take and things that he does do. And we have seen like, the Orochimarus and I forget the dude right now from Bleach, and like just all manner of like mad scientists in like, fiction and anime just go through like cross all types of lines. And I would like to say that Vegapunk tries to like, he toes it, tries to stay as close to those lines as possible, and I have to respect that. So Clover gets into telling Dr. Vegapunk a story about how he knows someone with the D in their name, and that was his brother, and how his brother got killed for that D. We finally get Clover's full name, which I will not try to pronounce right now. Sorry. And Vegapunk, has a lot of shame. Sorry, not Vegapunk. Clover has a lot of shame about the fact that he had to lie to the people that killed his brother about who he was and his relationship to his brother, just saying that, hey, I'm just his friend, because he would have been killed too. And he's angry and livid and just disgusted with the fact that, like, because of his that people can be murdered just for having the quote unquote wrong name in this world. And I can relate to that in a world where like you could get discriminated against, chastised, admonished, no sympathy and stuff like that just for the color of your skin. So we're gonna get into that in this review. There's actually like Oda is hitting the like greatest hits of like what makes One Piece so great in this chapter. And so if I remember, which my ADHD tries to foil me on all the time, I want to talk about that a little bit. So anyway, like I said, Vegapunk hears out Clover's sad story, but isn't about it. 4 years, and he warns him. He's like, "Hey, I'm not gonna report any of this. I'm gonna forget all of this. But listen, man, you gotta be careful and also be a little bit smart." Which this pissed me off too, because this dude is the most consistently naive motherfucker in the entire series, and this is the one time that he's like wise on the uptake, and he tells him like, "Why do you think the world government keeps releasing you? They want you to lead them to the other scholars," which, as fucked up as it is, ended up happening 4 years later with the Buster Call, and he hears from Caesar Clown that the Buster Call happened, that there was a survivor. We see the bounty poster of Robin, and you can tell that it's like fucking up Vegapunk, that he's really like beaten up over it. We get a little bit of a flash forward, not to the present, but to Vegapunk visiting Ohara, and he sees the books that are saved. And I'm assuming it was at some point after this time where he decides to digest this information that he got from them. So the information that he has on the Void Century is from the Oharans, I believe, not quite so much from Egghead and the ancient technology. Or it could be I think it's a combination of both, but I would go 70-30 Ohara to Egghead, and maybe some of the information he learned from the Oharan books is what helped contribute to what's it called, the Egghead experiments and technology and stuff, and understanding how it like operated and whatnot. And so there's a part of the chapter where he says, "Someone once told me the voices of the past call out to you. History is written by the victors, and the words of the vanquished are usually cast into a deep, dark ocean." Davy Jones' Locker. That being said, their truth can still come to light if the oppressed carry it on their back. If the oppressed carry it on their backs and endure. And I do not know why, but for the life of me, I just had this weird flashback back to Luffy, I believe Luffy, Sanji, and Nami on Drum Island, where Luffy just wills himself to like crawl up those giant islands to deliver, not those giant islands, but those giant mountains to help deliver Sanji and mainly Nami to Koreha in order to have them treat her. And I know it's not a one for one, and I know it's kind of random, but like I don't know why, but for the life of me, I cannot shake it. I cannot shake it, and Oda is all about his allegories and his metaphors and stuff like that. And part of me truly feels that like there is something here, and it made me like dig deeper. And I really think that like we get the name drop One Piece in this from Atlas later. I'll talk about that later, but whenever I heard One Piece, I always visually imagined everything being in one piece. So like everything together. But there's the other kind of connotation or definition of One Piece where like you're okay. And so I was thinking about all those books in that lake or whatever, and how they were all technically in one piece, and how Roger talks about everything in this world being in one piece. And now I'm thinking about all these, conspiracy theories. Like, why do you say this world? Does it mean that there's another world? And he says that all this world has to offer. And I think I prescribe to the fact that One Piece is going to be multiple things. I think it's going to be Binks' sake. I think it's going to be gold. I think it's going to be other things. But I also think it's going to be, most importantly, knowledge and history. I prescribe to the idea and the fact that those that do not know the past are doomed to repeat it. And I think that every single arc, every single important moment in One Piece has all been microcosms of the greater story. Like I say this every review, but we had Skypiea talking about how, the island was actually in the sky, not underground. And then even in Skypiea, the gold was actually underground, hidden in some ruins. And then we have just different examples of like sacrifice, and different examples of like, you know, slavery, and different examples of like knowledge, and this, that, and the other. And I think what this chapter specifically is trying to set up, or microcosm, is that the ancient kingdom did everything in their power to preserve as much knowledge, their stories, whether they be actual legitimate stories or maybe some fictional stories, and they're what they believed would help inspire people to keep living. And once again, like, you don't die unless, you know, you're forgotten. And so this way, it was their way of having immortality in a way, and making sure that their civilization wasn't forgotten, what their cause wasn't forgotten, the will of D wasn't forgotten, and maybe like just the will of humanity in general would always be like, the flame of humanity would always be like able to be rekindled, reignited, resparked, as long as this like knowledge and technology and information was present and available for someone to stumble upon and finally find one day. And I want to talk more about lingering wills and stuff like that later, because I have some more theories about what I think is going to be in the One Piece. And once again, that same theory I have about the poneglyphs, I'm going to bring back up because of something that happened with the Iron Giant later in this chapter. Anyway, I'm going to ramble less and kind of speed through because I want to hit certain points. So anyway, we have the Sunny, and they still need to get down to the land, but they can't because they're worried about Venus Juro slicing them, right? So Atlas decides to knock out Lilith, which actually takes her out of the Punk Records, which, by the way, I'm still nervous about because we're leaving the Punk Records, and I thought it would be a great way to either revive Vegapunk or still keep Vegapunk around, and I'm very nervous about that, the capacity and ability and power of that thing being in the world government's hands, especially when the world government still has York to access it and do whatever she needs to with it. So that's troublesome. I really wish we could have like tried to like steal it, but I'm sure it needs to stay to some like kind of life support system to keep the brain alive and healthy and functioning and like doing everything it does. But like, damn, that blows me. I do not like that Punk Records is being like left behind, more or less. But as I said, Atlas knocks out Lilith, takes her out of the Punk Records access. York thinks that, okay, Atlas is just left. Atlas bulldozes at Venus Juro, tries to distract them. She's getting work, but it doesn't really matter, and she blows herself up. Jinbei and Zoro and them use the time to leave. Obviously, Zoro and some other people want to help out. They want to stay, but Jinbei, being the wise, rational person on the crew that he is like, we would regret wasting her sacrifice here if we stopped or you know, hesitated or anything like that. We would come to regret it, and so they made a choice. And just another example of like Oda's greatest hits all in one chapter. Once again, just the idea of sacrifice. Like, think about time and time again, from like Pell to Pound to what was that, Pedro, and just countless others who have constantly sacrificed themselves, not just for the Straw Hats but for others, in order for, you know, will to live, freedom to live, for a chance for a better day. And this just is just another example of what is necessary for a revolution, what is necessary for freedom. Sacrifices and lives are going to have to be made and lost. And it's an unfortunate reality, but it is a reality at the end of the day. And I also would like to say that I would like to think that the explosive blast also gave them an extra bit to their coup de burst to get to the sea, right? So anyway, probably like my favorite part of this chapter, the Iron Giant speaks to Luffy, and I knew this before he even said anything at the very end, but I could tell that the Iron Giant wasn't actually talking, and it was Luffy hearing the Iron Giant's voice of all things. Similar to how Zunisha communicates with Momo, and Luffy can also hear that. Looks like the Iron Giant, that is also how they communicate. And it makes me think that, like, especially, not so much with Zunisha, because Zunisha is an actual living creature, but at least definitely with the Iron Giant, I'm thinking one or two things. Either the Iron Giant was originally a cyborg like Frankie, where it was human and turned into a, or it's completely autonomous. I lean more towards completely autonomous, and it somehow, some way, some shape developed a soul, and that's why we have all those cover art cover stories with Enel showing those automaton that do seem to have emotions, feelings, and thoughts. I think that was just kind of a foreshadowing of this Iron Giant and its abilities to have thoughts. We had the ships. I forget the German name of those little spirits. And I think we know that, like, for the most part, swords and stuff probably have souls and like a will of their own. Like how like Enma can like the cursed swords probably have a strong will. I think that's why they're cursed, because they actually have a will. They like in ways kind of communicate to Zoro. Zoro can feel them. He can feel their emotions, and like they want to cut, they want to kill, so they have a purpose. And so I've said this a million times. Japanese culture has a big thing about inanimate objects having like souls or spirits or wills to them, right? And the more you care about them, take care of them, love them, either the more that spirit grows, or the more it goes from being an inanimate object that's soulless to actually having a soul. So it's one or the other. It either increases its solar existence, or it gives it one, period, right? And so I wouldn't be surprised if the Iron Giant was something that didn't have one and eventually had one because of Joy Boy. And that's why I think one of my big theories or whatnot is that the poneglyphs are shaped in a cube because they either contain the actual bodies of people from the ancient civilization as a way to preserve them and carry them to the future when they could one day be needed. Maybe there's allies, maybe there's information or history. Or my other option is that there are somehow they were able to preserve the voice of all things, the voice of their souls inside the poneglyphs, which is why, despite not being able to read the poneglyphs, Roger was able to like kind of understand them because I think of that voice of all things aspect. So once again, I think that would be another really crazy reveal about the poneglyphs, and I would love for that to be so true, so I could have like a theory of my own, because I don't think anyone has come up with that. I do think someone has said that the poneglyphs are shaped like that because they contain something, but I don't think they said what they contain, and that's my theory. What they contain: either people from the ancient civilization, technology from the ancient civilization, or the voice or wills of people from the ancient civilization. So anyway, the Iron Giant addresses Luffy as Joy Boy, even though Luffy by this point has been addressed as Joy Boy at least like 4 or 5 friggin' times by different people. It has to be more than that. It's been I think Kuma. No, Kuma hasn't been talking, but it's been Joribani. It's been the Giants. Maybe Vegapunk or something. So like he's been addressed by Joy Boy by now. So even if he legitimately is like, I'm not Joy Boy, he should know by now that people are referencing me as Joy Boy. I look like, for whatever reason, I'm Joy Boy, but like still it's Luffy. He's an idiot, and he like looks away, and the Iron Giant's like, I'm talking to you. And I thought that was freaking hilarious. It cracked me up. I don't know why I didn't like the drawing of Luffy in this. He looked kind of childish. He looked kind of younger, different. I don't know if that was if that was intentional or not, but that was just something I noticed, right? And so, also, I don't think Luffy is that stupid. I think at this point he knows that, but I think he's just trying to make a point. Like, don't call me that, or I'm just going to keep pretending that. Because, like, at this point, like, that would be even too ridiculous for Luffy, right? And so, the Iron Giant just basically goes off about, like, I'm so happy to meet you again. I'm going to fight for you again. Whoever's your enemy is my enemy. And so we see that, you know, Joy Boy had, like, really, like, staunch allies that were ride or die for him, and that's great to see. And you know, there's been talk about like maybe they did something wrong, maybe Zunisha did something wrong, that's why he's been cursed to walk the earth for like however long he lives. But it looks like Iron Giant was a ride or die, similar to Frankie. And I don't know if I said this in my last review, but I truly do think there is a purpose why we saw Frankie debut Haki the same chapter where the Iron Giant hits the mess out of the bull with the tusk. And I also said that I also think that the Iron Giant got a power amp from there being not just one but 2 Joy Boys, and that that somehow he's able to convert the drums of liberation into energy or power. I thought it might be some kind of form of like the mother flame, but who knows? We have Frankie who operates on cola, so nothing is out of the stretch of, you know, the imagination in that regards, right? And so we see the Iron Giant walk up like a freaking G to the two Gorosei, and he shoots up his arm. And I'm thinking, is he gonna do like a not strong right, weapons left or something like that? But it's been like 900 years, and his weapon systems have been rendered inoperable in that time. They haven't been maintained. Maybe he doesn't have the ammo. Maybe he doesn't have whatever reason it doesn't work, and we see the sandworm completely eat like the what's it called, the left side of his body. He still has his head, but like his arm, like a big his arm and a big chunk of his like upper torso is completely gone. Now Saturn uses that time to jump on the ship that Luffy and the rest of them are on and attack. And during that time, the what's it called, the Thousand Sunny comes down. Once again, I'm really disappointed because it really looks like we're not going to get a lot of exposition from this robot. I hope we do, but this robot kind of seems fucked to me, unless with the combination of the giants and the Straw Hat crew that has now landed in the ocean, we can help the giant and at least get some like dying exposition from the giant. Fingers crossed, but it seems too good to be true. Kind of also would like for Frankie to get something out of this trip. If it's not from Egghead, at least maybe get it from this peak of like physicality and power Iron Giant. Who knows? Like maybe he can upgrade himself based on some of the ideas that he got from this giant. So who knows about that. So the chapter ends with York is ecstatic because now that Atlas is blown up, she thinks that she is the last Vegapunk alive. However, Nudge Joro basically says Venus Joro basically says that not quite. And I was confused at that line because at first I thought, wait, did he? Because he was right there. Did he see that Atlas just knocked out Lilith, and that's why he's saying not quite? Or is he still saying that technically the voice of Vegapunk is still broadcasting, and so until they get rid of that, the mission isn't done yet? So it could go either one of those ways. Originally, like I said, I thought it was Lilith they were talking about, but now I really do think it is the Stella because after under that, Saturn himself says, "We have let you say too much, Stella," and so they charge. And so while that's happening, Vegapunk is letting the world know that Gold D. Roger traveled around the world, and he has to know these same stories that Vegapunk knows as well. Also, Vegapunk talks about not wanting to learn things one-sidedly, and I agree with that because, like he said earlier, history typically is written by the victors, and so it is important to have some kind of nuance and perspective when you're going back and looking at things because, like he was afraid of, is there good or evil, or are there desires and objectives that conflict and contrast with one another? And so we end that with him revealing Goldie Roger's real name because once again, the populace of One Piece does not know Goldie Roger's name. They thought he was Gold Roger, and this was just another part of the world government's conspiracy to try to limit the information that the people have and hide that will of D, that D initial, and get rid of it. And so now the entire world is exposed to that as well. The greatest Pirate King's name, real true name, and the significance of the D, and now people are going to have an insatiable curiosity. And so Vegapunk ends with, "I am confident you all have come to the same conclusion at this point, and I anticipate that this will ultimately determine how things transpire in the future," which to me feels like Vegapunk's calling for a call to arms of a revolution of sorts, and he either thinks that the conclusion is maybe a dismantlement of the world government or the seeking of the true knowledge to come up with a true decision. Because one thing I love about One Piece is the lesson that it's not just okay to read things and just to hear things, but you need to go out and experience them for yourself to truly understand the real story. In the last panel, we have Hody Jones and the rest of his cohort all aged up and stuff, saying, what did he say about Goldie Roger? So I'm very curious about Oda's choice of including them there and why. Sorry about that. It's the summer and my camera has a tendency to overheat, especially in my room, and it does not get good circulation. It gets hot, so it cut off, and I don't feel like waiting like the 5, 10, 15 minutes for it to cool down, so I'm just going to finish here. So basically, I was ending off with what Vegapunk was talking about, and I anticipate that it will ultimately determine how things transpire in the future. And so whether he's calling for a call to arms and a revolution to dismantle the world government, or he's calling for like a grand expedition and I was gonna say seizure, but not taking, but seeking of like of the ancient knowledge, the history of the world, the will of D, and all that stuff. I don't really know. Maybe we'll find out next chapter, or maybe that'll be the perfect cutting off point to this transmission. We will see, but things are really, really, really rolling at this point. And if this isn't the end of the transmission, I can't imagine there being like I can't imagine there being more than one other chapter where we're still listening to this transmission. So I think this is either it or next chapter, and then we're done. And then after next chapter, we're gonna get away and flee because all the Gorosei are here. Vitas Juro, Nuzjuro, he got exploded. I don't think he's dead. I don't think he's that injured, but he's not interfering right now. Mars got blasted away. The pig, is the pig still around? I think I did see it in the panel, but I don't think they'll be able to keep up with them on C. Yeah, the pig's still around, Saturn's still around, and the worm is still around. But I think we're gonna find a way to get rid of them. And one thing I was almost about, and I'm actually kind of glad my camera died because I was going to forget about talking about one thing. So back to what I was saying. Everything is a microcosm. Everything keeps happening. From various warlords taking over islands to tricking people to manipulating people to there being traitors amongst various groups. I think that the end story of One Piece and the ancient government is going to be every single thing we have ever seen in One Piece, from corruption to greed to desire to love to hate to power to like just everything you can conceive of. With the fishmen in the last panel, maybe the fishmen were the arbiters or the originators of the ancient kingdom or something like that, and maybe that's pure. Maybe the reason, like some of the reason that some of these races are the most hated are because they have a power and ability that either the world government covets and wants or can't control and wishes to get rid of. And so maybe the fishmen have been a threat to the world government since the ancient times, and that's why they built a culture that detests them, that puts them in slavery immediately. And so there's that. And also we know for a fact that the legend of Joy Boy has been part of fishman culture for quite some time. So they are intricately tied and woven. Their like fates are intricately tied and woven with Joy Boys. So they're important to the grand scheme of things as well. And so the last thing I want to talk about before I leave is the Iron Giant is standing there and he's facing two of the Gorosei at once. And he goes, "Oh my, I have really rusted away. This is the time you spoke of, right? Joy Boy. Can I use it?" And for me, I was like, what does he mean? And then I realized, do you guys remember when the scabbards were fighting Kaido and they all broke out two sword style and used Ryu and were able to, let's just give it to him and say injure Kaido. They did injure Kaido. They injured Kaido, right? Give it to So I'm thinking, what if the Iron Giant is able to, in some way, shape, or form, borrow the powers of Joy Boy, similar to how the Scabbards borrowed the powers of Odin, except they didn't. I wouldn't say borrow, but they like learned his techniques, utilized it, and kind of like his will kind of lingered over them during the attack. If the Iron Giant can do something similar, and if the Iron Giant can do something similar, I'm wondering if at some point in the series, if Luffy is going to have a moment where the Straw Hats are able to, in some way, shape, or form, borrow his power or adapt his power in some way, shape, or form, right? I know a lot of people uh have had this theory that the rest of the Straw Hats will gain the ability to go Gear 5 to become Nika's in some way, shape, or form. And I'm gonna be real, when I initially heard it, I was kind of like off put. I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. That's a little weird. But I'm cool with it for two reasons. One, because it would be set up via Odin and how, the Scabbards, his disciples and stuff, were able to borrow his power and utilize it against a great enemy. And that would be a good parallel for the Straw Hats to do it as well. And also because fucking Naruto can do that shit. And don't get me wrong, I think One Piece is an infinitely better story than Naruto. And I don't think it means anything at all for one main character to be able to beat another main character, but God, does it feel good to have that in your belt. Boy, does it feel good, because I'm gonna be real with you. The entirety of the series as they were running concurrent, I've always had One Piece above fucking Naruto. I always had Bleach is the strongest, One Piece, then Naruto. And then the last Ninja War completely tipped the scales and destroyed all the power scaling and just put Naruto on a level of power scaling that wasn't even like comprehensible for like what we've seen in his series, right? And so, not that I don't want him solely for, I'm making jokes. I don't want it solely for that purpose, but I think it would be good for him to have that ability. It would make sense, and it kind of reminds me of the rally fruit that fellow Betty has from the Revolutionary Army. And I think that, we've learned with Del Fruits, a lot of them have similar abilities, can do the same things, more or less. And so, if like maybe all Del Fruits stem from the Nika fruit, or Nika can do anything that any Del Fruit can do, because we've seen him use fire, lightning, and all different attributes of different Devil Fruits and stuff like that, then it would stand to reason that maybe it would have the ability to imbue or allow others to imbue its power and utilize it. And I feel like we're going to need that, especially in the final war, when we have all these allied pirates, nations, and friends, and just anyone who's affiliated and acquaintances we met over the years come in. They're going to need some kind of power amp in order to participate in this fight. And I think that would be, the perfect thing and somewhat logical. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning into Otaku Talk. It's me, your boy, your host, OD. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It would mean the absolute world to me. Take care. Peace. Have a great weekend.